Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and good morning everyone, especially to our Professor Fernando Secata Jr. So we are the group 3 and we are assigned to discuss about portfolio assessment. Before anything else, let me introduce to you the group members. First, ABUBACAR Almerah, ASINDA Jamila, CAMALODIN Hafsa, KHALID Norhafidah, NORHAZIM Aisha, and your one and only Abdullah Hakim A. Let me first present to you the content or the coverage of our report. First, definition of portfolio. Second, definition of portfolio assessment. Third, difference between portfolio assessment and portfolio collection. Fourth, comparison of portfolio and traditional forms of assessment. Fifth, 3 types of portfolio. Sixth, uses of portfolios. Seventh, purpose of the different types of portfolio. Eighth, advantage and disadvantage of portfolio assessment. Ninth, developing portfolio assessment. 10th, guidelines for assessing portfolios. And the last but not the least, contents of portfolios. And now, let me present the learning outcomes of our report. Define portfolio assessment, portfolio, working portfolio, showcase portfolio, and progress portfolio. Differentiate portfolio assessment from traditional assessment. Differentiate portfolio assessment from performance-based assessment. Give the advantage and disadvantage of portfolio assessment. Identify the different kinds of portfolio. Identify each purpose of the different types of portfolios. Give some uses of portfolio assessment. Determine the different steps in developing a portfolio. Develop rubrics in assessing the portfolio of the students. Identify the different guidelines in assessing the portfolio of students, and evaluate the portfolio of the students. And now let's start the topic. Let me give a brief introduction about assessment. Based on what I learned or what we have learned in our previous subjects, our major subjects, specifically in CP 105, assessment is defined as a proper collection, interpretation, and use of information in regards to learning. Basically, it gives the teacher a better awareness about the knowledge of the students in their understanding, and what our learning experiences are also about their skills and personal characters and also their capabilities. So the assessment should be in sync and supportive of learning. Another thing is that it should be valid in nature. The assessment should be proper and manageable, and it should support the judgment of a teacher. And lastly, it should support accountability, not only for the teacher but also for the learners as well. So one of the various types of assessment is the portfolio assessment, which is a term with many meanings, and it is a process that can serve a variety of purposes. So what is portfolio? Accordingly, a portfolio is a collection of student work that can exhibit a student's efforts, progress, and achievements in various areas of the curriculum. It is also the collection, it is also stated that the collection must include student participation in selecting contents, the criteria for selection, for judging merit, and evidence of student self-reflection. And lastly, the greatest value of portfolio is that in building them, students become active participants in the learning process and its assessment. I can still remember when I was in grade 7 and grade 8 in Maa National High School in Davao City. We do have this portfolio in a subject. In that portfolio, we are assigned to to compile all the work or activities, the assessments or the quizzes, and compile it in a folder or a creative folder. So it is basically it's up to us to make it creative or not. So I think I can greatly relate, or I already experience what portfolio is. Since we already know what portfolio is, let's talk about what portfolio assessment is. It has been stated in different articles or chronicles that portfolio assessment is one of a several authentic and non-traditional assessment technique in education. Basically, a portfolio assessment can be an examination of students' selected samples of work experiences and documents related to outcomes being assessed, and it can address and support progress toward achieving academic goals, including student efficacy. Moreover, portfolio assessment have been used for large-scale assessment and accountability purposes, for purposes of school to work transitions, and for purposes of certification. For example, portfolio assessments are used as part of National Board for Professional Teaching Standards assessment of expert teachers. So basically, this is an assessment that that greatly compile or that greatly collect all the activities of the students, or presents the best achievements of the students or best works of the student in a one folder or in a one specific material. Let's talk about the development of portfolio assessment. Portfolio assessments grew in popularity in the United States in the 1990s as part of the widespread interest in alternative assessment. Because of high-stakes accountability, the 1980s saw an increase in norm-referenced, multiple-choice tests designed to measure academic achievement. By the end of the decade, however, there were increased criticisms over the reliance on these tests, which opponents believed assessed only a very limited range of knowledge and encourage a drill and kill multiple choice curriculum. In that case, advocates of alternative assessment argued that teachers in schools modeled their curriculum to match the limited norm reference tests to try to assure that their students did well, teaching to the test rather than teaching content relevant to the subject matter. Therefore, it was important that assessments were worth teaching to, and modeled the types of significant teaching and learning activities that were worthwhile educational experiences and would prepare students for future or real-world success. Involving a wide variety of learning products and artifacts, such assessments would also enable teachers and researchers to examine the wide array of complex thinking and problem-solving skills required for subject matter accomplishment. More likely than traditional assessment to be multidimensional, these assessments also could reveal various aspects of the learning process, including the development of cognitive skills, strategies, and decision-making processes. By providing feedback to schools and districts about the strengths and weaknesses of their performance, the influence and influencing what and how teachers teach, it was thought portfolio assessment could support the goals of school reform. By engaging students more deeply in the instructional and assessment process, furthermore, portfolios could also benefit student learning. So, in that case, it is already surfaced that the portfolio assessment also develop cognitive skills, strategies, and decision-making processes of both teachers and, of course, the students as well. Let's move to the features and principles of portfolio. So portfolio assessment possesses several features and essential characteristics, which are: first, a portfolio is a form of assessment that students do together with their teachers. The teachers guide the students in planning, execution, and evaluation of contents of the portfolio. Together, they formulate the overall objectives for constructing the portfolio. As such, students and teachers interacting in every step of the process in developing a process. Secondly, a portfolio represents a selection of what the students believe are best included from among the possible collection of things related to the concept being studied. It is the teacher's responsibility to assist the students in actually choosing from among a possible set of choices. So basically, to be included in the portfolio. So, however, the final selection should be done by the students themselves, since the portfolio represents what the students believe are also important considerations. The third principle is that a portfolio provides samples of the students' work which show growth over time. By reflecting on their own learning, by reflecting on the students' learning or self-assessment, students begin to identify the strengths and weaknesses in their work. These weaknesses then become improvement goals. So basically, once students collect or compile activities or best activities that they have, they could be able to recognize or evaluate themselves. They could see where they are good or where they are not. Basically, they can see what's their strength and what's their weaknesses. For instance, the student is very good in viewing a macro skill, but not in writing macro skill. So something like that. And the last one is that the criteria for selecting and assessing the portfolio contents must be clear to the teacher and to the students. At the outset of the process, if the criteria are not clear at the beginning, then there is tendency to include among unessential components in the portfolio and to include those which happen to be available at the time. The portfolio is prepared at each step of the process. Therefore, the students need to refer to the agreed set of criteria for the construction and development of the portfolio. To understand further portfolio assessment, let me differentiate portfolio assessment from other types of assessment. So first is portfolio assessment and traditional assessment. So portfolio assessment and traditional assessment are distinct ways to measure a student's academic progress. In portfolio assessment, students present present essays, cases, projects, and other works developed over a particular class, grade level, or throughout their entire middle school or high school career. Typically, classroom assessment or the traditional assessment requires students to show what they have learned in a unit or semester in a class. For instance, the traditional multiple choice or true or false classroom assessments are a common way of teacher assess whether students have learned material taught in class. But portfolios allow students a more creative way to showcase their experiences in academic progress. In a typical portfolio assessment, students verbally present or in written form, they present their work and argue persuasively what they have learned in a unit or subject. While schools and instructors sometimes believe a portfolio assessment is better for students, many still use standard testing to align with state and national standardized testing programs that assess school performance. So basically, traditional assessments such as the modified one, the giving of essay, giving of what they call this multiple choice, matching type, or any other is different from what they call this portfolio assessment. So advantages of a portfolio enables faculty to assess a set of complex tasks, including interdisciplinary learning and capabilities, with examples of different types of student work. It also helps faculty identify curriculum gaps, a lack of alignment with outcomes. And now, let's move to portfolio assessment versus performance-based assessment. So performance assessment and portfolios are complementary approaches for reviewing student development and academic progress. Together, they represent authentic assessment, continuous assessment of the student progress, possibilities for integrating assessment of learning process in higher order thinking, and collaborative approach to interact in the teaching and learning process. In general, a performance-based assessment measures students' ability to apply the skills and knowledge learned from a unit or units of study. Typically, the task challenges students to use their higher order thinking skills to create a product or complete a process. So, from the word performance-based, the assessments are more on performing something or more on performance, while portfolio is presenting your activities in a creative way. Portfolio and performance-based assessments are currently being used in a limited basis and at various levels of implementations. It has helped teachers to understand the true meaning of student assessment and what a child can produce beside the traditional test questions. This type of assessments involve a more in-depth process that the students are actively involved in their learning. So let's move to the types of portfolio assessment. So basically, there are three famous known types of portfolio assessment or kinds of portfolio assessment. First is the working portfolio. So this is a working portfolio is what I experienced in my junior high school because our teachers in Maa National High School encourage us to make a portfolio in every subject. I think it is it is mandated, or it is encouraged by the principal to let the teachers use portfolio assessment as a student assessment. So basically, the working portfolio is a very important document for showing evidence of the student's practice during a class or even a professional experience placement. The working portfolio is a working document or written form. This means that you will be building or adding to the portfolio every day during your placement to display and the tasks and activities that you are completing or the students completing. It is usually in the form of a folder that includes all your lesson preparation and planning, your observation, assessment strategies, student work samples, daily reflections, and evaluations of your teaching. I mean, evaluation of learning. So, the working portfolio must be organized by the student so that they can easily locate lesson and reflections to show that they can supervise their own working portfolio each day or to produce any sample requested by the teacher. Note that an incomplete working portfolio can be grounds for placing at risk, or it can also be a problem if the teacher asks for a specific activity from the working portfolio. The second type is the showcase portfolio. I do love this type because I think it encouraged the students. Based on my experience, I think this could motivate the student to make the portfolio or to make their own portfolio creative and with artistic materials. Basically, this type of portfolio focus on the portfolio as product and are also typically called a formal or career portfolio. The content that's added to showcase portfolio is written after the learning takes place, often with the reflection from the students. So, the showcase portfolio is often used to share a student's best achievements or evidence of learning. So, students are generally given the choice to decide what to publish or what to include in their portfolio. These sorts of portfolios can assist with self-marketing, online branding, or building a positive digital footprint. In higher education, we see commonly students showcasing portfolios that highlight a student's CV or curriculum vitae to suit a particular purpose, such as attracting potential employers. And in the learning of the students, specifically in what they call this in high school level, students are basically includes activities or assessments where they got higher score or they think that it's their best work in a unit or in a semester. The last but not the least is the process portfolio. So basically, this third type of portfolio that we commonly see is more of a running record of learning. The purpose is, of course, to capture the learning process. It's also called a development portfolio or reflection portfolio or sometimes formative portfolio. So, entries and artifacts are added during the learning process. A process portfolio is not always a collection of students' best work. It can include a variety of learning attempts or unpolished documentation, along with reflection on struggles and challenges. So basically, this also includes a reflection or a journal where students present or share their struggles or challenges in making a certain activity. This type of portfolio demonstrate a work in progress and allow for self-assessment and reflection. So that ends my discussion. Please listen to my group mates.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am Norhafidah Muhammad KHALID and I'm going to discuss about the purposes of the different types of portfolio. Working portfolio documents the stages of learning and provides a progressive record of student growth. This is interactive teacher-student portfolio that aids in communication between teacher and student. The working portfolio may be used to diagnose student needs. In both student and teacher have evidence of student strengths and weakness in achieving learning objectives, information extremely useful in designing future instruction. Working portfolios serve as a holding bank for students' work in progress before it moves into a display or an assessment portfolio or is sent home with the student. This type of portfolio can help the students reflect on their work, can help teachers assess students' needs, and can be presented to parents during parent-teacher conferences to demonstrate students' growth over time or present the evidence of the children's strengths and weaknesses. Showcase portfolio may document student activities beyond school. For example, a story written at home. It is just like an artist's portfolio where a variety of work is selected to reflect breadth of talent. Painters can exhibit the best paintings. Hence, in this portfolio, the student selects what he or she thinks is representative work. This folder is most often seen at open houses and parent visitations. The most rewarding use of student portfolios is the display of students' best work, the work that makes them proud. In this case, it encourages self-assessment and builds self-esteem to students. The pride and sense of accomplishment that students feel make the effort well worthwhile and contribute to a culture for learning in the classroom. Best work portfolios can be collected over several academic years so that the student may also display the work to the next year's teacher. High school students can also use portfolios during interviews with prospective colleges or employers. Best work portfolios can include work produced by the student in different academic disciplines as well as some examples of extracurricular activities that help showcase the student's skills. A process portfolio is a purposeful collection of student work that documents student growth from novice to master. Successful process portfolios actively engage students in their creation, especially in determining their goals, selecting work to be included, and reflecting on how each piece demonstrates progress toward their goals. This simple guide can help any teacher begin implementing this practice in their classroom. Let's proceed to the uses of portfolios. First, it can provide both formative and summative opportunities for monitoring progress toward reaching identified outcomes. Second, portfolios can communicate concrete information about what is expected of students in terms of the content and quality of performance in specific curriculum areas. Third, a portfolio is that they allow students to document aspects of their learning that do not show up well in traditional assessments. Fourth, portfolios are useful to showcase periodic or end-of-the-year accomplishment of students, such as in poetry, reflections and growth, samples of best works, and etc. Fifth, portfolios may also be used to facilitate communication between teachers and parents regarding their child's achievement and progress in a certain period of time. Sixth, the administrator may use portfolios for national competency testing to grant high school credit to evaluate education programs. Seventh, portfolios may be assembled for a combination of purposes such as instructional enhancement and progress documentation. A teacher reviews students' portfolios periodically and make notes for revising instruction for next year use.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. I am ABUBACAR Almerah. In today's lesson, I'm going to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of portfolio assessment. Let us first discuss what is portfolio assessment. So when we say portfolio assessment, it is the systematic longitudinal collection of student work created in response to specific known instructional objectives and evaluated in relation to the same criteria. Portfolio creation is the responsibility of the learner with teacher guidance and support, and often with the involvement of peers and parents. So it is a purposeful collection of student work that exhibits students' efforts, progress, and achievements in one or more areas. Each portfolio might contain a collection or a selection of examples of the students' work. Why use portfolio assessment? Portfolio provide teachers with a tool for showing what, how, and how will students learn both intended and incidental outcomes. They provide students and teacher with creative, systematic, and visionary ways to learn, assess, and report skills, process, and knowledge. Now, let us move on for the advantages of portfolio assessment. The first one is promoting students' self-evaluation, reflection, and critical thinking. It serves as a cross-section lens that providing a basis for future analysis and planning. And also, it covers a broad scope of knowledge and information from many different people involved in the assessment of student learning and achievement. The advantages also of using this portfolio, it promotes a shift in ownership that students take an active role in examining what they have done and what they want to accomplish. Number 3 is measuring performance based on a genuine samples of student work. And number 4, enabling teacher and students to share the responsibility for setting learning goals and for evaluating progress toward meeting the goals. It offers also the possibility of assessing the more complex and important aspect of a learning area or subject matter. And it gives the students the opportunity to have a extensive input into the learning process. Another one also is facilitating cooperative learning activities, including peer evaluation and tutoring, cooperative learning groups, and peer conferencing. So as a teacher, you're the one who's going to facilitate and guide your student in that certain given task. And the second one is providing a process for learning in stages. And the third one is providing opportunities for students and teachers to discuss learning goals and the progress toward those goals in structured and unstructured conferences. And for the last one is enabling measurement of multiple of dimension of student progress by including different types of data and material. Now, let us move on to the disadvantages of portfolio assessment. So, the first one is requiring extra time to plan an assessment system and conduct the assessment. So, it only means that it can be very time-consuming for teachers to organize and evaluate the content of portfolio. And the second one is gathering all of the necessary data and work samples can make portfolios bulky and difficult to manage. And the third one is developing a systematic and deliberate management system is difficult, but this step is necessary in order to make portfolios more than a random collection of student work. And for the fourth one, scoring portfolios involves the extensive use of subjective evaluation procedures such as rating scales and professional judgment, and this limits reliability. And for the fifth one is scheduling individual portfolio conferences is difficulty, and the length of each conferences may interfere with other instructional activities. It may be also be seen as less reliable or fair than more quantitative evaluation. And for the last one is portfolio can be just a miscellaneous collection of artifacts that do not show patterns of growth and achievement. That would be all for the advantages and disadvantages of portfolio assessment.
Assalamualaikum and good day everyone. My name is Jamila P, ASINDA, and I was assigned to discuss developing portfolio assessment. To begin with, let us first discuss the development of portfolio assessment, or how portfolio assessment was developed. So, portfolio assessments grew in popularity in the United States in the 1990s as part of a widespread interest in alternative assessment. Because of high-stakes accountability, the 1980s saw an increase in norm-referenced multiple-choice tests designed to measure academic achievement. By the end of the decade, however, there were increased criticisms over the reliance on these tests, which opponents believed assessed only a very limited range of knowledge and encouraged a drill and kill multiple choice curriculum. So accordingly, drill and kill multiple choice curriculum means providing students an exorbitant number of repetitions on a particular skill or task until their intellectual curiosity is ultimately crushed. That implies a classroom teacher would repetitively force students to complete the same task or skill after they have clearly demonstrated mastery or proficiency. Moreover, advocates of alternative assessment argued that teachers and schools modeled their curriculum to match the limited norm referenced tests to try to assure that their students did well teaching to the test rather than teaching content relevant to the subject matter. Therefore, it was important that assessments were worth teaching to and modeled the types of significant teaching and learning activities that were worthwhile educational experiences and would prepare students for future real-world success. Involving a wide variety of learning products and artifacts, such assessments would also enable teachers and researchers to examine the wide array of complex thinking and problem-solving skills required for subject matter accomplishment. More likely than traditional assessments to be multidimensional, these assessments also could reveal various aspects to the learning process, including the development of cognitive skills, strategies, and decision-making processes. By providing feedbacks to schools and districts about the strengths and weaknesses of their performance and influencing what and how teachers teach, it was thought portfolio assessment could support the cause of school reform. By engaging students more deeply in the instructional and assessment process, furthermore, portfolios could also benefit student learning. So let us proceed with the next slide. Using portfolios in assessment. So one of the tips in using portfolios in assessment is to start small, which is the first thing is to showcase portfolio. So to showcase portfolio, we have to consider first starting with one assignment plus a reflective essay from a senior level course as a pilot project. A faculty group evaluates the mini portfolios using a rubric, then use the results from the pilot project to guide faculty decision on adding to or modifying portfolio process. And the next step or the next one is developmental portfolio. So in developmental portfolio, we have to consider starting by giving a similar assignment in two sequential courses. Example, students write a case study in a 300 level course and again in a 400 level course. In the 400 level course, students also write a reflection based on their comparison of the two case studies. A faculty group evaluate the mini portfolios using a rubric and then use the results to guide the faculty members as they modify the portfolio process. So here are some of the suggested steps in using portfolios in assessment. The first one is we have to determine the purpose of the portfolio, decide how the results of a portfolio evaluation will be used to inform the program, and then identify the learning outcomes the portfolio will address. Now, to determine the purpose of the portfolio, we must identify at least 6 courses assignments that are aligned with the outcomes the portfolio will address. Thus, upon planning when to implement a portfolio requirement, the program may need to modify activities or outcomes in courses, the program, or the institution. And then the second one, we have to decide what students will include in their portfolio. So portfolios can contain arranged items such as plans, reports, essays, resume, checklists, self-assessment, references from employer or supervisor, audio, and video clips. In a showcase portfolio, students include work completed near the end of the program. So in a developmental portfolio, students include work completed early and late in the program so that the development can be judged. So one of the tips in decide what students will include in their portfolio, it should have limit the portfolio to 3 to 4 pieces of students' work and 1 reflective essay or memo. The next one, identify or develop the scoring criteria. Example, a rubric to judge the quality of the portfolio. Now for this one, we have to include the scoring rubric with the instructions given to the students and then establish standards of performance and examples such as examples of a high, medium, and low scoring portfolio. Then the last one, create student instructions that specify how students collect, such as tell students where in the curriculum or co-curricular activities they will produce evidence related to the outcomes being assessed, and then ask students to select the evidence, instruct them to label each piece of evidence according to the learning outcomes being demonstrated, and then reflect, give students direction on how to write a 1 or 2-page reflective essay or memo that explain why they selected the particular examples, how the pieces demonstrate their achievement of the program outcomes, and or how their knowledge, ability, attitude changed. And then the format, tell students the format requirements. Example, type of binder, font and style guide requirements, online submission requirements. And then give submission and pick up dates and instructions. So one of the tips in helping the students on how to create instructions that specify how students to collect, select, reflect, format, and submit, we have to emphasize to students the purpose of the portfolio and that it is the responsibility to select items that clearly demonstrate mastery of the learning outcomes, and then emphasize to faculty that it is their responsibility to help students by explicitly tying course assignments to portfolio requirements. Now, a faculty group scores the portfolios using the score criteria. Use examples of the standards of performance to ensure consistency across scoring session and readers. So that would be all for my part, and the next discussion will be discussed by the next presenter. So thank you for listening.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good day to you, sir, and to all of my classmates out there. I hope that we all are doing well in this time of pandemic. So my name is Siti Aisha NORHAZIM under this class CP106, and with our group leader, Mr. Abdullah, I am tasked to deliver to you the guidelines for assessing portfolio, how to evaluate the portfolio of students. So here are the guidelines for assessing a portfolio. So the portfolio assessment. So here are the possible scenarios that could happen in a portfolio and the corresponding scores for each scenario. So for the score 4, if the student includes a piece of work for each item on the checklist that clearly meets the criteria suggested, writes a short paragraph about each item, weaving a connection between the pieces and describing what was learned, shows reflection about his or her thinking and learning over time. So in score 4, the student includes a piece of work for each item on the checklist that clearly meets the criteria suggested. So let's bear in mind that all the portfolio or all the kind of assessments that will be given by the teacher, there are corresponding criteria suggested. So if you met the criteria suggested for every portfolio or assessment, then you have this score 4. So you also write a short paragraph about each item. So remember that it is a short paragraph. It is a paragraph, not just a sentence. Okay? You weave a connection between the pieces and describe what was learned. So you connect, you share a connection between that piece, and you describe what you have learned about it. And shows reflection. You show your reflection about your thinking and learning over time in the time of doing that portfolio assessment, and connected to that pieces that you have presented. So for the score 3, you include a piece of work for each time on the checklist. Writes a short paragraph about each time, is somewhat reflective of how his or her thinking has changed. So just like the score 4, you also include a piece of work for each item on the checklist. Write a short paragraph about each item, is somewhat reflective. You are not completely showing your reflection, or you are not completely seen as reflective, but still you are somewhat reflective of how your thinking has changed over time on doing that assessment. That's again connected to your presented pieces. So for the score 2, you will have the score 2 if you include a piece of work for each time, just like the score 4 and 3. You write something about each piece. So the difference between the first and the second mentioned, in this third that I'm mentioning, you just write something about each piece. You're not actually focused on about that connection, about that piece. You just write something about it just to have a presentation about it. So you are not reflective of how your thinking has changed, and also you do not connect between the pieces and you do not describe what you have learned about your portfolio, or again connected to your presented pieces. So you will have a score 2. So for the score 1, you will have a score 1 if you include a piece of work for most times. Writes little about pieces of work. So you also include a pieces of work, but not for a specified time. You generalize it, and you do not specify, or the item is not specified to the checklist that is given by the teacher, and you write little about the pieces of work, meaning little, just a little, not just write something about each piece, but you write a little about the pieces of work. So you will have 1, and you are again not connecting between the pieces, and you do not describe what you have learned about that portfolio and your presented pieces, and you are not reflective. So you will have the score 1. So for the score 0, you will have this score 0 if you do not complete a task. So it's obvious that if you do not complete a task, then you'll get a 0 in any assessment that you have, not just for the creating a portfolio or performing or doing that portfolio, but all kind of assessment or all kind of task or assignment to you. Then if you do not complete it, then you'll have a 0, right? That's actually understandable. Or you do not give information, you also give information that has nothing to do with the work chosen. So how come that you make your portfolio with and write something, or write information or give information that has nothing to do with the work chosen? That is a bad style on writing. That's a bad idea on doing your portfolio assessment, because how can you do it? How are you confident that you give information that you know that it has nothing to do with the work chosen, and that's work chosen is assigned by your teacher, and you do not even include a piece of work for each item on the checklist that clearly meets the criteria. You do not follow the criteria suggested. You do not write even a little about the pieces of work. You do not wave a connection between the pieces and describing what was learned about that portfolio or about that pieces presented by you. You are not somewhat, just a little bit kind of being reflective, and you are not that reflective. You do not show reflection about your thinking and learning has changed over time. So surely you will get 0 score. To sum up the guidelines for assessing a portfolio, you will have the highest score for if and only if you meet this criteria suggested, this mentioned here. Yes, and you will have the second highest score, the 3, if you do this part, and you'll have 2 if you do this. You'll have 1 if you just make something that just to comply, and 0, the lowest score. Of course, the lowest score is 0 because there's no following score after the 0, right? So you'll get this 0 if you do not complete the task or gives information about, or you give information that has nothing to do with the work chosen. So that would be all for me. Again, I am Siti Aisha NORHAZIM, and thank you.
Good day, sir. By the way, I am Hafsa CAMALODIN, In this video, I'm going to discuss the content of portfolio. But before that, let's first define how to create a portfolio assessment. So first, you need to determine what type of portfolio is best suited for your needs. So here are the examples. Student portfolio, project portfolio, professional portfolio, online portfolio, and personal portfolio. So student portfolio, it is useful in an academic setting, demonstrate knowledge attained in a given class or throughout your school career. This portfolio can be very helpful if you plan on continuing your education beyond the undergraduate level. Second one, project portfolio. It is useful in an academic and professional setting, shows the effort or steps taken to complete a specific project or independent study. For example, if you have the experience of producing a school play, you would create a portfolio that incorporates the materials and research that was involved. If you want to apply for a grant in order to do another play, then you could use your portfolio as a form of proof that you did a good job and would be a prime candidate to receive the request grant. Third is a professional portfolio. It is useful in professional setting. Demonstrate your skills, background, accomplishments, and experiences. This portfolio is versatile and can be arranged for a specific position. For example, a teaching portfolio would be a type of portfolio, a professional portfolio that would highlight experiences, achievements, goals, and ambitions for a position as a teacher within an educational institution. Fourth, online portfolio. Useful in an academic and professional setting, enables your credentials to be more easily accessible via the internet. They should not take the place of a hard copy portfolio but be created in addition to one. This portfolio can be very helpful for those planning on applying for a job in the field of technology and or graphic design. Also, an online portfolio can be useful to anyone in a given field. As the information age progresses, prospective employers are being to request online portfolio. Bear in mind that several employers may be located afar, and with one click of a mouse, they can access your information more readily. Fifth, personal portfolio. Simply for your personal use. This portfolio is a collection or a scrapbook of things that interest you. This portfolio could be used as a stepping block toward understanding who you are and where you would like to be in the future. Your school maybe have a list of things to include in a student portfolio, or it may be entirely up to you to decide on what you want to showcase. The important thing to remember is that the student portfolio is a purposeful collection of work samples that celebrate an individual's successes, strengths, and areas for improvements. So, here are the list of things included in student portfolio. First one is sample of work from each subject area. So, keep it simple. Includes materials such as written assignments, journals entries, completed tests, artwork, lab reports, physical projects such as dioramas or models, and other materials, evidence of learning progress and academic accomplishment, including awards, honors, and so on. Second one, writing samples include plans and draft copies. Open-ended tasks such as mathematics and investigation. Fourth, student self-reflection. Reflective portfolio is a set of writing that summarizes the insights and experiences a student has gained from practical assignments. It is used to assess the student's engagement with their field work and their ability to use theoretical knowledge in an applied setting. The portfolio itself can take many forms, including an extended written piece, a notebook or binder of short writing and documentary evidence, or an online archive of such pieces. So there are many benefits of student self-reflection. Reflection encourages students to see the importance of their own learning, identify what they did well and what they need to improve on, feel motivated, think critically, and lastly, set goals and targets. So photographs to capture positive learning experiences such as a group work. Also, goals and target are the content of student are other example of content student portfolio. The purpose of this is to assess and gather relevant information about student performance or progress, or to determine student interest to make judgments about their learning progress. Also, the certificate and award, recognition certificates for motivation and personality. Lastly, summative assessment pieces if applicable. So another one is the working portfolio. So here are the contents in working portfolio. As you begin to create your portfolio, there are several different categories that you should consider: personal information, values, personal goals and history, accomplishment and job history, skills and attributes, education and training, as well as testimonials and recommendations. So this is the important thing you should consider in writing your portfolio. Always be as specific as possible. Your portfolio can become quite a large collection of materials. For interview purpose, it would be a wise strategy to select items from your portfolio to be included in a smaller interview portfolio. So here are a list of possible information to include. Content of your working portfolio. First one is the letter of reference. Of course, when you apply for a new job, it's helpful to have a letter of reference that can attest to your skills and experiences, also known as a letter of recommendation or reference letter. A letter of reference refers to the documents that endorse an individual's capabilities, characters, traits, and the overall quality of their work. Second one is the resume or vitae. A portfolio resume is a specialized type of creative resume that showcases examples of your work along with the standard resume information about your work experiences. A portfolio resume is an excellent way to show potential employers your skill and accomplishments rather than just explaining them. So, also the list of accomplishments. A portfolio showcases achievements, strengths, and skills you have attained through school, work experience, and training. Also, sample of work. For example, item produced on internship or co-op experiences, class projects, items produced from previous job. Memo and or. Also, the contents of your working portfolio are the memos or reports, the designs or the photographs, and the transcript. It is a detailed record of your marks or grade that has been generated by your current or former university. Usually, this will be a document, either on paper or online, with at least or table of the individual modules, papers, or courses you have completed with a numerical and or later grade against each. Also the license or certificates. And lastly, the evidence of specific skills. For example, is writing, graphic design, public speaking, leadership, event management. Depending upon your profession, certain items can be added to provide a more detailed representation of your knowledge and skills. As with this, any interview portfolio, you should include the best example of your skills, of course, and abilities that are relevant to the position you are seeking. So the following are the things that we must consider in making a portfolio. First and foremost, it is very important that your portfolio looks professional, and accurately reflects your skills. It should be specific and occupationally focused. It should be easy to update and view, self-explanatory if needed, support information presented in your resume, and second, it is vital to adopt a specific presentation format for the material within your portfolio. For example, introductory title page, table of content that can be organized two ways, chronologically or functionally. Third is the work sample. It should provide a reflection statement for each sample. Reflect statement can be in either paragraph or bulleted form. And lastly, the reflection statements should contain a brief description of the sample item and its background and a detailed list of the competencies developed by the sample. So when creating a small portfolio for an interview, please consider the following. Place item in a loose leaf binder. Use sheet protectors. Use copies of your work and keep a master copy available. Organize your pages by index tabs and or dividers. Try to keep this portfolio between 5 to 10 pages in length. Avoid page numbers as these allow you to add and move things around more easily. Be consistent with headings and placement of items. And lastly, keep the section job specific. And that's all for my part.